So, good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out this evening to explore the important and wonderful subject of cultivating nourishing food at Vancouver schools. Before we start, I'd like to thank the DPAC executive for their generous and ongoing support for this workshop. I'd also like to thank the wonderful people who stepped up to organize this workshop. Vicki Baker, a Vancouver parent and passionate healthy foodie and gardener, and Joyce Wong and Helen Young from Vancouver Coastal Health. This workshop couldn't have happened without all of this dream team's knowledge, passion, dedication, and hard work. The agenda this evening is designed to provide some context as to why we as parents should care about the kind of food that's served to our children at school, what the current situation is around food in Vancouver schools, a vision for ensuring Vancouver children are getting nourishing food at school, and a look at some paths that are being pioneered in this area. I'll start the program off with a quick presentation on the case for healthy school food. I'll be followed by Shehzad Shamji, Assistant Secretary Treasurer at the Vancouver School Board, who will provide an outline of the VSB's Food for Schools program and Food Framework report. Then Helen Young from Vancouver Coastal Health will provide an overview of the province's guidelines for food and beverage sales in BC schools. Helen will be followed by Alexa Pitulis from the Coalition for Healthy School Food. Alexa will share some school meal program success stories. And then Marin Corkery will discuss the Farm to School initiative for food literacy in support of healthy food in schools. Finally, Brent and Chef TJ will share some healthy options for school lunch programs. Once our brains are filled with all this inspiring information, we'll have an opportunity to discuss, explore, and brainstorm ideas around this subject and hopefully come up with some great ideas and questions on how to best move forward toward providing nourishing food in Vancouver schools so that all our children will have an optimal base to help them achieve their full developmental potential. Thank you. And now I'll start the evening off with the case for healthy school food. Before I'll begin, I'll just say that I'll introduce myself. I am the DPAC rep on all things food, and I became passionate about school food because I have background in marketing for a Fortune 500 big food company. And so I lived the reality that the only thing that big food companies care about is revenue and profit. They made that really clear when I was there. And they were really clear that ethics have no place in business. So they didn't care whether the food was healthy. So when our daughter entered kindergarten and I discovered that big food, brand name junk food was being served at her school, I had to get involved, not just for the health of my daughter, but also for the health of all kids. So that's that. And now I will jump into the introduction and then Shazad will follow me. So just to quickly look at the case for serving healthy food in Vancouver schools, and Vicki, you can go to the next slide. Are you in control, Vicki? Yeah, thanks. I'll just say that I'll acknowledge first that I know we're preaching to the choir tonight, and that all the wonderful people who've showed up here already probably get why they should care about feeding kids healthy food in school. But I'll just say quickly that not all parents understand the importance of feeding children healthy food in school, or even what healthy food is. And over the years, I have heard at PAC meetings that some of the following ideas or quotes actually: if a parent doesn't want their child to eat school lunches, then just don't order them. And that's not acknowledging the undue influence that's comes from whatever is served at schools. And then another thing I've heard is school lunches raise, oopsie, we lost it. We we lost it, Vicki. Okay, thanks. School lunches raise lots of money, and isn't that the PAC's top priority? And hint, it's not. Um, as long as my child eats, isn't that all that matters? That ignores the foundation for development of lifelong eating habits that happens in school. And finally, lunches are sold at school just a few days a week. So what's the big deal? And actually, 30% of nutrients, kids consume 30% of their nutrients at school. So, yeah, that's just a quick overview for the people who are probably not on this call or not at this meeting, as to why it is important to go back and hopefully evangelize with them and convert them to caring. Vicki, next slide, please. So there's global support for the notion and the case for healthy school food. The United Nations in the Rights of the Child says it establishes the right of the child to enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health. Next slide. UNICEF supports programs that increase awareness about the benefits of good diets, healthy eating habits, and physical activity among school-aged children and adolescents. And they advocate to protect children from the marketing of unhealthy food and beverages and to help consumers make healthy food choices. Consumers, kids are consumers, obviously, too. Next slide. The World Health Organization says that good health and nutrition are needed to achieve full educational potential because nutrition affects intellectual development and learning ability. And schools offer better opportunities than any other setting to promote health and healthy eating. They reach young people at a critical age of development when eating patterns are being developed. Next slide. And the Government of Canada's Public Health Agency says that health and education are closely connected, and research shows that healthy students are better learners. Since young people spend most of their day in school, this setting has an important role in the health of children and youth, and they support the comprehensive school health approach, which includes offering healthy food choices at school and school policies that support good health. Next slide. And my favorite slide is the province for BC guidelines for food and beverage sales in BC schools. And Helen is going to get into this a lot more. So I'm just going to briefly gloss over what they say in introductorily. Healthy children learn better. Children with healthy diets have improved brain development and mental abilities, increased self-esteem, reduced anxiety, less depression, and hyperactivity. And students learn best when the lessons they receive in the classroom are consistently reinforced outside the classroom. They are committed to support healthy schools where students learn and play, and their policy is to maximize students' access to healthier options and to eliminate the sale of unhealthy foods and beverages in schools. Next one. And in 2018, there was a report from the Auditor General of BC, and they said that schools offer the greatest opportunity for shaping the future health of people in BC because they reach almost every child and their family. Healthy eating and physical activity lower the risk of chronic disease, which affects 1 in 3 people and uses approximately 80% of BC's healthcare budget. So very important to build that foundation in schools. But education and health ministries, they noted, need to work together better. And their recommendations in the report were to improve both health and education ministries' oversight, maximize access for vulnerable students, monitor programs for effectiveness, and address barriers to implementation of programs and policies. So in 2019, the DPAC asked the VSB for a few things. They asked the VSB to set goals of schools to provide nourishing food for vulnerable children. And that's the first priority. And the second priority was to ensure all food sold in schools is healthy. And they asked the VSB for these deliverables to strike a food committee with external stakeholders, which, yay, the VSB did, and to develop strategy and plan for food sales in schools that develop food education programs, find guideline compliant vendors, let schools know fundraising is not a mandate. And we ask that that be rolled out to the DPAC schools and PACs, and with ongoing follow-up and monitoring, because to date, the Vancouver School Board hadn't really acknowledged or really reinforced the existence of the guidelines with Vancouver schools. So um, they weren't really being. Many people didn't even know they existed when our daughter started school, and they certainly were not being supported or let alone enforced. So next slide. The DPAC also asked that schools prioritize healthy food programs that support children, and that they comply with the guidelines, develop school-specific programs that support healthy eating, and wean PACs off of prioritizing PACs and schools, I guess, off of prioritizing fundraising. However, if that's not possible, on the next page, there is a list of non-food fundraisers. And if we go to that, this will be available in the presentation in the deck that will be available to people. So the next slide is the VSB progress to date. In 2020, yay, they appointed a food framework advisory committee. Thank you. And in 2022, they approved a food framework vision, which is what is that every student has access to nourishing food at school. They develop the skills they need to choose, eat, grow, prepare, and share food through VSB school food programs. So very happy about that. However, there hasn't been any progress on that since June of 2022 when it was uh, approved. And the concern that the DPAC had, and that I was the DPAC rep on the food framework committee, and I registered our concern that the vision came with a 10-year horizon. And the first thing is that vision statements don't normally have timelines attached to them. That's really more for strategic and operational plans. But also, and probably even more importantly, that 10 years is such a long horizon on such a crucial issue that that was very concerning. And it wouldn't light a fire under the VSB to get going on this. So next slide. Um, this is the chronology, just I won't go through it all, but basically to show you that the province launched the guidelines in 2005, going through the years, 18 years later and counting, we're still waiting for the guidelines to be existing in schools, to be implemented at the school level, and not forget about enforced, just even really supported. So we would hope that I hope Shehzad is going to talk about the wonderful things that they've got coming up that they're going to do to start implementing the guidelines. And with that, the last slide will be just to say thank you. And my vision personally, I'll share with you, is for healthy, happy children developing to their full potential in service to helping make a better world. And yeah, I wish we could have that. And that's all I have to say. And I'd like to hand it over to Shehzad now, or actually Vicky, I think will introduce Shehzad.
Yeah, thank you so much, Selena, and thanks everyone for coming tonight. I'm really excited to hear all these speakers. So thanks, Selena, for presenting the DPAC and the DPAC vision. And I will turn it now over to Shehzad. I know he has to leave at 8 p.m., so I'll encourage anyone that has questions over the course of the presentation to maybe just put them in the chat, and hopefully we'll have time for him to answer a couple questions before he leaves. So Shehzad, are you here? Can you turn your camera on?
I am here. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hi, nice to see you. So Shehzad is the Assistant Secretary Treasurer at the VSB, and I understand he was also involved with the VSB food framework process. And so looking forward to hearing you speak to that. And with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Vicky, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present here tonight. If you can just go on to the next slide there, Vicky. Just give you an update as far as what I'm going to be speaking to really is the the food programs that the district offers. These are district-based food programs, not the ones that are done by individual schools. So this is running out of the district office. Also speak to some guidelines and safety plans for serving food at school events. So whether they're PAC sponsored events that are serving food or school sponsored events, we do have a template and sort of a little infographic as far as what's required. I'll show you that a little bit later on in this slide deck, but I'll also send that template out to Vicky and hopefully she could circulate it to the group. And then finally, just give an update on the food framework. As Selena mentioned, you know, there was the motion by the board back in 2019. And just as we were starting to get the committee going, the pandemic hit. So it got sort of put on the back burner for a little bit, but we did do a lot of work between January and June of 2022. A number of meetings with all the different stakeholder groups. A lot of the folks who are speaking here after me with their presentations were part of that group. And we developed a pretty comprehensive document and framework, which was presented to the board in June of 2022, which they approved. And just we'll give an update as far as the work that staff have undertaken with regards to the food framework report. Still a lot of work to do, but you know, there's been a good start on it. So if we just start up with the next slide, please. Talking about looking at the different food programs that the district offers. So you can see on the left-hand side, there's 2, 4, 6 or 7 different programs offered at a number of sites throughout the district. And the number of students that are sort of participate in the programs on a daily basis. So, you know, the teaching cafeterias, there are 6 of those, 6 of the secondary schools throughout the district. I don't have the number of students who are actually taking sort of culinary arts or cooking classes, but we do have 6 of those. We also have 11 non-teaching cafeterias, which produce meals or food throughout the day and for sale at the district and the cafeterias at the schools. 25 different hot lunch, school lunch programs serving 1,951 students a day. There's also 7 elementary hot breakfast programs and 8 secondary breakfast programs. And then our Food for School program, which is probably our largest program, which runs through 57 sites and serving about 1,100 schools or 1,100 students daily. So that's sort of the breakdown. The one thing that we are working on is that we've set up a couple of commissary kitchens. One is at Britannia and the other one is at Templeton. And the goal is that for September of 2023, the Food for School program, which does the lunches, will provide a hot lunch to all the students that are participating in the program. Right now, we have our Templeton commissary kitchen, which is set up to produce hot lunches. The Britannia cafeteria equipment still needs a bit of an upgrade, and that's going to happen in the summer. And then for September, they'll be able to provide hot lunches. So that's something that we're pretty excited about. We're working with the different departments in the district to make sure that the food arrives at the schools safely. As I think Helen's going to go through later on with the sort of the school guidelines and the healthy, you know, we want to make sure that it's maintained at certain temperatures and things like that. So there's been a lot of work to do that, and it's a good program that's being prepared by district staff, and so far the food coming out of Templeton, we've heard nothing but positive results from that. So looking forward to taking that to the next step. The next slide, please. So this is I know it's going to be probably hard to read on your screen, but this is in the template that I'll circulate to Vicky to circulate to everybody else. So this is really just basically an infographic as far as what are sort of the requirements if you're looking to have an event at a school site and they're going to be serving food. So, it talks about what are the food safe requirements. Does it follow the healthy food policy? Is there a food safety plan? Is insurance required? And communication plans, risk reductions, things of that. So this is, like I said, this is in the template, which will circulate along with in the template. So after this is sort of 3 documents that have to be complete, that if you're having an event that's serving food, you would sort of go through that checklist of events. And for one thing that the PACs should realize is that these events, even though if the PAC is hosting it, they still need to be signed off by the principal of that school. So at the end of the day, the principal is responsible to make sure that this document is completed. And this isn't just for the PACs. This is something, even if a school is hosting an event that they are serving food at, they would follow the same process. So it's not, we've tried to make it pretty generic so that it's easy to follow, and then they would follow that through. So just to give you a brief summary on that, and we'll get that out to everyone. So the food framework, as I mentioned, September of 2019, there was a motion. Ms. Selena mentioned, it was to produce a 10-year vision and food framework. We formed the working group in January of 2022. There was 19 stakeholders. We had 2 students who participated in the meetings coming out of the Vancouver District Student Council. The report was completed. We did bring a facilitator in, and they completed the report, and it was presented at the June Student Learning and Wellbeing Committee, and the board received the report at their June 27th board meeting. And so staff have reviewed the report, have gone through it, and there's been some work that has happened, and there is a lot of work. The report actually contained a lot of information, everything from teaching students how to grow their own food, prep food, outdoor gardens. There was things such as making sure that the district could provide different options of meals for either cultural or religious purposes, and things of that. So we've had a bit of a start on it, which if you move to the next slide, I can go through and show you as far as some of the work that's happened. So first of all, we introduced the vegetarian option to reflect diversity of cultures of the student body and broader community. That pilot started in September of 2022, so just this school year, and we piloted it at Admiral Seymour Elementary School, and we had about a 25 to 30% uptake of the vegetarian options with the student body. So it seemed to be working well. We've expanded that out to, I think, 2 or 3 other sites in January of 2023. And see, we'll determine what that uptake is like, and then expanded it throughout the district. Hopefully after spring break. If not after spring break, then it'll probably be, September, when we have our second commissary kitchen up and running to be able to provide the hot meals. Another piece that came up was about destigmatizing the use of food programs. So currently, what students who were part of the program, and this is especially in the secondary schools, they would receive a sort of like a card that they would tap at the cafeteria that would cover the cost of the meal. And what we're moving towards is almost an app-based program, so that students can just do it with their phones. If they don't have a phone, we'll probably get a generic card, but it would just be a way to, so that they remain anonymous if they participate in the program, they don't participate in the program. So really taking out the stigmatism of being involved, being part of the or using the food program. We're reviewing process to eliminate waste. You know, there's certainly days where the district sees a lot of wastage, and there's other days where, you know, I think it depends on the meal. Sometimes the students like one particular meal better than another. So we're making sure we're looking at the menus to make sure that they follow the healthy food guidelines that need to be followed, but at the same time produce meals that are, I guess, that the students want and will eat versus them ending up as waste. And I guess we're also looking at sort of recyclable containers or recyclable cutlery, things of that. So, you know, make sure that is followed as well. We have some Indigenous healing holistic gardens that honors the 4 sacred medicines. That was another piece that came out during our food framework meetings, as far as sort of connecting with the lands and you know, making sure that the students learn how to grow food at the outdoor gardens that schools have. And then advocacy for universal food programs. So that, I think that was almost the impetus of the motion by the board. It was Trustee Estrelita Gonzalez's motion back in 2019. And I know she was advocating for a universal food program. So I know during the select standing committee on budget submissions that the board does to the provincial government, you know, we've put in there about providing more funding for school food programs, and we'll see what comes out of it. So that is something that that the board has taken up, and we'll follow through with that. So there are some further, the report is on our website. Sorry, I don't have the link, but I could probably send that to Vicky as well if people do want to read that. But we'll make sure we'll get both the report and this template out to the group. And and you know, as staff, we continue to work through and provide the best possible meals in the most efficient way possible with the funding we have. We know we're not serving every student that needs meals provided to them during the school day, but we're doing the best we can with the funding we have. We are also working with our business development manager. He's getting some partnerships that are in place. There's one at Ekpe Elementary where it's called Fresh Plate. So we've partnered with Canaccord Capital, and they're funding the breakfast program there, and we're hoping to take that out to other school sites probably next year. And we have a couple other partnerships with one's with Hotel Vancouver, and on a monthly basis they provide, I think, 200 to 300 frozen meals that students can take home with them over the weekend. So, you know, we're trying to get that done as well. So we're looking at different options, but it is something that it will take some time to implement all the food framework recommendations and suggestions. So that is my presentation, Vicky, and hopefully that provided what everybody was looking for.
Okay, thanks so much. I know there's some discussion in the chat, but I also know that you have to leave soon. So if it's okay with you, then if there's direct questions, can we follow up with you afterwards?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And then we can circulate the information. I know that I see that a lot of PACs are looking for a list of lunch providers, and I think that's an important distinction to make, because the VSB does provide some meals for kids, but it is on a targeted basis, right? It's more to support kids who would otherwise come to school hungry. correct?
That's right. Correct. Yeah. And we, we rely on the school principals and teachers to really identify students who are in need. And that's probably the best way to get them to participate in the program.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I think that's helpful. Yeah, and otherwise it really is up to the PACs then to find a lunch provider that kind of meets the guidelines and provides those meals that you were talking about that the kids will like. So that's what we'll be talking about for the rest of the meeting as well. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll follow up after the meeting on this. And now I will turn it over to Helen Young, who is a public health dietitian at Vancouver Coastal Health. And she's been active in the school food movement for a number of years now. And I know running events on the North Shore for PACs as well, kind of doing similar work to this, helping to support PACs really, and doing some of the consultant work to answer like, how can we get healthy food into our schools and what does that even mean? So I will turn it over to Helen now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Vicki, and thanks to DPAC for inviting me to present. I'll take about 10 minutes to go through some slides that include both about the guidelines for food and beverage sales in BC schools. And I have 3 slides from the senior environmental health officer, Cultivating, who's on our call today. And she provided 3 slides on food safety, what PACs need to know. And like Vicki mentioned, my section is going to be more about helping PACs use the guidelines when they're looking for a vendor, if you're doing a PAC fundraiser or a hot lunch program. So that's different than what Shazad was talking about. So this is for the PAC run organized lunches. So I'll just, maybe I'll just go to the next slide, please. And the next slide is basically the comprehensive school health model. And Selena mentioned it, but I just wanted to show the 4 pillars, because you can see where PACs have a role under community partnerships. The PACs looking for vendors contribute to the healthy relationships and environment section. So what the students are eating at school is part of that food environment. It's both what they're eating and how they're eating it. The speakers after me are talking about some really innovative student programs where the students are cooking the food and they're growing the food in their gardens and using it in their lunches. So over the last 10 years, we've seen a growth of these kinds of hands-on learning programs where the kids are learning through all 5 senses, and we see comprehensive school health in action. So the guidelines are mandated for schools to follow, and many school districts have it in their policies and procedures manual that they will follow the guidelines. The kids are learning about physical and health education and all the parts of the curriculum. And what the PACs are doing and vendors are doing are creating healthier food environments so that the students can access these healthy foods. So if you don't mind, next slide, please. So the guidelines that we're following are the 2013 version. Some of you may remember that last spring, there was a consultation from the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. There was a consultation on revised guidelines in 2022. And there was a lot of feedback that the ministry received. So they needed time to go through all of the feedback, and it is being revised now. But it wasn't launched this past year. It will, I think the plan is for new guidelines to be implemented in September. And in the meantime, until new ones come out, we are using the 2013 guidelines. So these apply to food and beverages sold to students, not what's packed for school, what parents provide to their children from home. Next slide, please. And so there's actually 2 slides that relate to the categories. The old guidelines are based on nutrient criteria, And so the full document of the guidelines is actually about 80 pages. And so I'm not going to go through all the details because I'm thinking that the 2013 guidelines will apply from like for the rest of this school year. So if you are looking for vendors that will meet the guidelines, this really is for this school year. And hopefully we'll have new ones in September. However, having said that, I think a lot of the foods that are in the sell most category and in the do not sell, they'll be similar. So for example, you're probably wondering, well, what are some examples? So sell most category would have a lot of salads, things like chickpea entrees, and sometimes you might have like a submarine sandwich, or maybe a cheese pizza or veggie pizza on partial whole wheat crust. Do not sell category would include things like candy, chocolate bars, and pop. And so just to give you an idea of what are in those categories. And then there are the guidelines say that you should sell up to 50% of your items should be sell most, and then up to 50% of your items can be sell sometimes. And next slide. So that slide was for just going back, or we're going backwards. Yeah, so the next slide refers to items that are freshly made by restaurants or catering companies. And basically it's either sell or do not sell. And so again, the sell categories would include a lot of salads, but a lot of wraps, burritos, a lot of foods fit into the sell category. It is nutrient based. Again, the criteria. The do not sell things would be things like deep fried French fries, but you could sell baked potato wedges, right? So my next slide kind of goes through, if you are working with a vendor to try to make the menu items healthier, you can ask them to, just change the seasonings by making things, giving flavor from, the sauteed garlic, onions, ginger, and spices and herbs, adding flavor that way, lowering the sugar, salt, and fat. And that's because it's nutrient based. The guidelines mean that you can think about portion size. So if you have questions about the guidelines, we could talk about it more. And I think we can do a breakout group at the end if you have more questions. Next slide, please. So I have a few slides about PACs, just to ask themselves questions about moving towards healthier menu items. And I think what are our goals? It refers to, what's important, more important, is it the raising money or is it the health aspects? And just thinking about, do our current menus help our food sales, help reach our goals? And how else can we reach our goals while we're engaging students and parents and the broader community? So I raise these questions because my role is just to provide information, tell you about the guidelines. We have Canada's Food Guide, which is the 2019 Canada's Food Guide online. And so in my breakout group, I'll just advertise that we can talk about Canada's Food Guide that came out in 2019. And the idea of updating the guidelines for food and beverage sales in schools is to align new school food guidelines with the 2019 Canada's Food Guide. So I just wanted to say that different people do have different priorities and values. So when, as a PAC, you might want to just think about considering that everyone is on their own healthy eating journey. And so where some people might be really already eating very well, and there's a lot of factors that relate to why they might be eating well, others might not be there yet. And to just remember that a PAC is making decisions for the entire school, which is made up of many different families with different priorities and values. Next slide, please. So this also gets into defining healthy, and that healthy is complex, and the guidelines put into black and white a topic that has many shades of gray. That's healthy eating. And so if you want to know more about what the Canada's Food Guide is based on, there are Canada's dietary guidelines, which form the basis of healthy eating recommendations, and that is part of Canada's Food Guide. It's all on the Food Guide website. Next slide, please. And it's an interactive online food guide. This is the first version that is actually an online suite of tools. It's not a paper version. You might have seen the paper version. When you go to the food guide website, you'll see the snapshot. So the 2-page snapshot is just the snapshot. It's actually not the full food guide. For the full experience, canada.ca/food guide. It's an interactive website. You can click on, say, the fruits and vegetable part of the plate, and then you'll get to tips on how to increase vegetables and fruit. And then you click on, say, the glass of water, and you'll get tips on how to increase water drinking. So it is there's also a recipe section, there's videos. So it's a good resource for families if you're looking for recipes and tips. Next slide, please. And so Cultivating is online. If you, I'm going to just read this out, but if you prefer to just say this, Cultivating is the Senior Environmental Health Officer in Vancouver Coastal Health. And these slides refer to what PACs want to know about food safety. So have your school lunch coordinator having food safe. When you're choosing potential vendors, you can check their inspection history on the VCH inspections website, or if yours vendors coming from Burnaby, then that would be part of Fraser Health. And you're looking for the infractions and what kind of infractions they were, if they're critical or non-critical. It's always a good idea to discuss your food vendors with the EHO and the phone numbers there. And this came up with like a sushi provider, a sushi, like a cucumber sushi or California roll that would fit the guidelines. But if your restaurant is used to having like 3 tables and serving only a few dozen people, and they're suddenly being asked to make 300, that's a food safety concern. And just to remember that the food safety, we all want healthy and safe food. And so your EHO is someone you want to contact for their advice and asking them about vendors if they can handle the extra school lunches in that business. Next slide, please. And Shazad mentioned this, and just the monitoring of the food, basically keep hot foods hot and cold foods cold. The PAC lunch coordinator and their volunteers would monitor the delivery, ensure appropriate time and temperature controls are met, and just making sure that food is safe, that they're serving this. Next slide, please. And just contact your EHO to discuss whether an event requires a health permit. Sometimes an event where it's open to the public and you're serving potentially hazardous food is when you would need to get a permit. But that's the phone number you can call for Vancouver. Next slide, please. The common elements in healthy diets, healthy eating looks different in many cultures, many families, but the common elements includes an emphasis on eating a variety of vegetables, fruit, and protein foods, and whole grains. Dietary guidelines are now saying to eat plant-based foods every day, including beans, lentils, tofu, nuts, and seeds every day, if you don't have allergies to those foods. Healthy diets are good ×3. Their health, that's good for planetary health, good for human health, and also tastes good, because children just eat what tastes good and looks good to them. Focusing on food literacy, sustainable food systems, and I've given you the Food Guide website. So I know my time is getting to the end. Just next slide, please. Yeah, just when you're making changes, think about relationships first. You're working with many people, and what's right for you may not be right for someone else. We don't want food fights, but we do want to create healthier food environments, and that's what tonight's event is about. So yeah, I will go to the last slide. I've given you my email address if you have any questions related to this, and 811 is just a general phone line for telehealth services to reach a dietitian if you have general nutrition questions. So thank you, and we can discuss it more in a breakout room if you have questions.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Helen. Did we want to take some questions now, Selena, or should we wait until the end? What do you think?
Well, we wanted to for Shahzad because he had to leave, but Helen, if you don't have to leave, maybe we could wait to the end and do that like you suggested in the breakout rooms or discussion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that because I'm excited to hear, the rest of the speakers. Like mine was just more for external vendors when PACs are organizing, but we wanted to profile success stories and just exciting, inspiring programs that are happening in your schools. Because it's really the ideal when you engage students and have them in the cooking and the food prep, and you're embedding food literacy and the curriculum with the garden and the food program. Allison, you have your hand up.
Yeah.
Hi there, Helen. I was just wondering if you do in-service stuff with PACs or with staff in individual schools.
Yeah, I would love to reach teachers. My new manager in health promotion would like us to, what she calls, build the capacity of educators, and if we could do a PAC, like a large PAC meeting. I couldn't go to individual schools, but I could do something like this, and I have done it for I work on the North Shore and have done workshops on feeding picky eaters and feeding our children well, just kind of those kinds of events. I'd be happy to do something if like personal nutrition or family nutrition, but for a larger audience. Yeah, and teachers are such an important group. I did do a workshop on Teach Food First. Teachfoodfirst.ca is a K-8 teachers resource that was developed with teachers and public health dietitians in BC. So yeah, happy to do a workshop for teachers. And
thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, the guidelines apply to any food provided by PACs, not necessarily sold by PACs, right? So even if we're providing it like at an event, like a sports event, then the guidelines would apply then as well, right?
Actually, the guidelines are for foods that are sold to students. Yeah, and it was proposed last year that it would be covering foods that are provided, but I don't know what the new guidelines will say. But currently, the 2013 guidelines are just for foods that are sold to students.
Okay. Interesting distinction. Okay, well, thank you so much, Helen, for that, and we'll get to more questions in the discussion later. And now we'll turn it over to Alexa Pitulis, who is wearing two hats tonight. She is both the executive director at Fresh Roots, that is an urban farming organization that runs schoolyard farms and does a lot of work with food literacy in schools. And she's actually also on the steering committee for the BC chapter of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, which advocates to higher levels of government to really fund a universal school food program. Alexa, if I can turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Vicki. Thanks, everyone. So nice to see everyone. Yes, my name's Alexa Batulis, and I'm going to mostly focus on talking about the work of the BC chapter of the Coalition for Healthy School Food, but happy to answer any questions anyone has about the work of Fresh Roots and how that kind of connects. I'm also a mom of two kids who've been through the VSB system. They're both at Hastings Elementary, and my son graduated from Templeton, and my daughter's finishing up, fingers crossed, Van Tech this year. So I've definitely near and dear to my heart is everything to do with school food. And so I am also just want to mention that I'm stepping in for Samantha Gambling, who's the project coordinator for the BC chapter of the Coalition of Healthy School Food. And I'll tell you a bit more about what that chapter actually is. It's administered by the Public Health Association of BC. And so Sam's away on holidays, but I've been involved in the steering committee for several years now. So I'm happy to chat and answer questions. Next slide, please. we've been talking quite a bit about sort of the importance and the value of healthy school food and access to school food. So I'm going to probably pick and choose some of the slides and how much detail I go to, just to not sort of overlap with what others have said. But overall, what the theme has been is that, in context across BC and Canada, the research shows that children and youth who are often consuming insufficient and unhealthy diets due to both barriers to accessing nutritious food and appropriate food, as well as low food literacy rates and disconnection to our food system. So all of these have negative impacts on physical and mental well-being and academic performance, and with long-term public health implications, as we know. And so, next slide, please. It's sometimes fun for me. This came across my Instagram feed last week, and it kind of hit home. Is to, sometimes you're so involved in the advocacy work and things you care about, and it's like, just take a moment to think about why food and the ability to feed ourselves and access to nourishing food is important. And, I love this. It says, who knew that the hardest part of being an adult is figuring out what to cook for dinner every single night for the rest of your life until you die? It's a bit of extreme, but it really brings it home that this is a critical life skill. And it's not, and so I think the work of the coalition that I'm going to talk about is saying, it's not just about meeting basic needs of getting food into kids, that school food is like an absolute leverage point to look at how we can be, feeding, but also nourishing the minds, bodies, souls of our kids, and giving them lifelong skills, like one of the most important lifelong skills. So I love that. I'm going to go back to that meme. Next slide, please. So we've talked a lot about this, but this is sort of the holistic approach to school food. And around the world, what I've got to say is that there are incredible programs happening that support healthy eating behaviors, food literacy from very young ages, and that are recognized as critical health promotion policies. And so I'm just going to zoom through the next slide, please. But unfortunately, the Canadian reality is actually appalling. And so we've been talking here about some of the fragmented programs that exist, but Canada is the single G7 nation that has yet to develop a federally supported school food program. And we're ranked 37 out of 41 countries in providing children with access to nutritious food. Like we can do better, and there's such an opportunity right now. And so that's what I'm going to talk about. Next slide, please, Vicki. So school food in BC. So just let me just bring up my notes. Just because there's no dedicated federal funding or regulation for school programs in Canada doesn't mean, obviously, that school meal programs don't exist, as we've heard tonight. So in BC, approximately 75% of school districts report having a meal program in at least one school, and that's probably a low estimation. These programs, as we've heard, and as you all know, are run at classroom, school, or school district scale, and often rely on parents, nonprofits, or other members of the school community to develop and run. And while there are some fantastic programs out there, the current patchwork approach is really only reaching a small percentage of students and really does not meet the needs of hungry or undernourished students. Furthermore, often the programs are somewhat stigmatizing and are sort of like I won't say the lowest, standard, the minimum standard, but aren't really looking at like what's the potential of lunchtime and feeding programs. How could we be really elevating the work of school food? So next slide, please. So this is where the coalition comes in. So the Coalition for Healthy School Food is the largest school food network in Canada, and it's united by a vision of a Canada-wide comprehensive approach to school meal programs that will eventually enable all K-12 students to have access to a healthy meal or snack at school every day at little or no cost to families. Next slide, please. So when I say comprehensive, what I'm meaning is that it's, there's been some well-honed guiding principles developed across Canada, and these are based on many people have participated in this room, dietitians, practitioners, educators across the nation have come together and have spent a lot of time discussing and assessing, what is really core. And so these are sort of the guiding principles. And I think Brent, I'm going to have Brent put the link to the coalition in the chat so you can check things out on your own. But really it's around health promoting. So both serving nutritious foods, but also fostering healthy school environments. So one of the things that's coming out of the research is that it's not just about the eating, it's also about the connection and about the conversations and the energy that happens in a different way when kids and teachers gather together to share a meal. So it's really about the food experience, that it's universal, that all children can access the programs in non-stigmatizing manner, that it's cost shared. And here we said between federal and provincial governments, but I would say there's also an opportunity for third parties, for nonprofits and other community organizations to be involved, that it's respectful and flexible to local conditions. So it's not a one size fits all model, that there's local and community control over how these programs roll out. And that there's a commitment to have Indigenous control over school food programs for Indigenous students. Finally, that it's connected to communities, supporting local food providers and economies, comprehensive, as I'm saying, and that from a Fresh Roots perspective, comprehensive to me also means the food literacy, but also the connection to where food comes from. Where is the school garden or the discussion of the soil health that's necessary to grow the vegetables and the quality of the environment that provides the food on the table. So it's that holistic approach. Next slide, please. So the coalition across the country is now up to 234 nonprofit member organizations and over 100 endorser organizations. So that's from all provinces and territories. The Vancouver DPAC has already signed on as an endorser, so that's fantastic. And here you're seeing logos of highlighting some of the 50 plus member and endorser organizations here in BC. So some you might recognize, and then others are maybe missing. And so definitely reach out to us. This is part of spreading the word, is if you know folks working in the space or connected to the space, this is a great moment to get to make those connections and get others involved. Next slide, please, Vicki. So just to give the three main activities of the coalition are really to bring together stakeholders from diverse sectors. We're advocating to the provincial and federal governments and supporting the knowledge sharing and outreach to school food practitioners and facilitating school research. There's so much research on the school food movement happening right now in Canada. It's pretty exciting. Next slide, please. So just quickly, I want to share a little bit about how the advocacy is going in Canada and BC. 2019 was a big year for school food. In the budget was announced the government's intention to create a national school food program, and things have progressed since. So we've seen the first ever inclusion of school food in not one, but two ministerial mandate letters in Canada. This has not happened since the 1940s. A discussion of the national school food has really not, and funding for it it's been long overdue. Just this past fall, the two ministers held joint consultations on a national school food policy. Many of you might have seen a link going around with the public questionnaire. And now the coalition is really focused on making sure school food's going to be included in the upcoming budget. And so I'll talk in a minute about the actions that you can take. Next slide, please, Vicki. So provincially, we've also seen a lot of movement, and I will see probably in BC, there's probably more movement than any other place in Canada, except for PEI, which you know, is a smaller, different. Anyways, different. But so what we've seen is that there's multi-partisan support for school food. And after the 2020 provincial election, in the school food was put into 2 mandate letters of BC ministers. And with the recent changeover, these directives have remained in the mandate letters for the Minister of Education as well as the Minister for Agriculture. So these mandate letters basically give specific direction for those ministers and their departments and those bureaucrats to be working and paying attention to school food. So the exciting thing is that as a coalition, as the BC chapter, we're now working and engaged with both of those ministries on several projects and in constant dialogue in trying to advocate as they are putting and basically at a data gathering stage of looking at how could this work? How can we take steps towards this comprehensive universal school food movement? Similar to the National Coalition, the BC chapter is now completely focused on trying to make sure that school food is included in the 2023 budget in a way that supports the school districts to plan and build capacity for school food programs. So we're not necessarily advocating, and if people have more specific questions about sort of the specifics about what we're asking for at this stage, happy to discuss or have any follow-up calls at any point. Last slide, please, Vicki. So action, where can you find out more? I haven't spoken, I'm pretty jazzed up, as you can tell, about like the momentum building around advocacy work. Advocacy work can be really long and boring, but I honestly feel there's so much energy and the case is so strong. Like, it's just such a no-brainer. Investing, this is not a cost on our budget. This is an absolute investment in the future health and well-being of our kids, of our communities, of the environment, of our local economies. Like, it just goes on and on. The return on investment, the social return on investment data is mind-boggling. So it's really just about us like making the case and continuing to put pressure on government, because the case, the business case and the social return case is there. It's just about how we go about doing it. So please reach out, subscribe for the updates from the coalition. If once you subscribe, then you'll get involved in, you'll get the letters, the newsletters. The website's fantastic. Right now, there's 2 easy tools to use. They take like a couple minutes each. You can write to your MLA. There's a template letter, so you don't actually have to think about what you want to write unless you want to add your own words. You can write to your MP. But now is really the time for like all parents and really like all Canadians to be getting involved in this. I just think I can't speak more about what this would change for so many. So I've probably gone over time. Last slide, please, Vicki. And Marin's sharing some things in the chat. This is just mine and Sam's contact information, and that'll be in the follow-up presentation slides that are sent out. But as I say, both Sam and myself and other members of the coalition are, happy to, come in and speak to small groups or engage in any way. So I'll just leave it there. Thanks so much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexa. It's hard not to get excited when you hear all the momentum that's happening around school food and start to envision like what it actually might look like once it rolls out. So happy to hear that BC is well on its way, and hopefully we can see this in like the next few years. Yeah, thanks, Brent, for putting the link in the chat. I encourage everyone, it literally takes like not even 2 minutes to just go and add your name to it, and it means so much. Okay, so anyway, thank you, Alexa, again. I'm sure we'll talk more in the discussion after, but now we'll move to Marin Corkery, who is going to be presenting on the Farm to School BC. So she is the Vancouver area animator with Farm to School BC, which is a program of the Public Health Association of BC. So in her role, she supports school communities not only in Vancouver, but also in Richmond, the North Shore, and the Sea to Sky, to integrate farm to school programs that bring healthy, local, sustainable foods into school and provide students with hands-on learning opportunities to develop food literacy, all while strengthening the local food system and enhancing school and community connectedness, which I love so much because it's not just about the food that we're eating, but it is a whole system. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Maren.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. And I'm hoping to offer some things that are complementary to the other speakers so far. So I'll be talking a bit about the Farm to School program and how it kind of fits within the school food landscape, as well as some ideas for fundraisers that support local food systems. So less around the policy and food safety things that were already shared, and more about some ideas of alternatives or different things that we've seen worked in schools. Next slide, please. So as Vicki mentioned, Farm to School BC is a program that brings healthy, local, and sustainable food into schools across British Columbia. And our three principles are healthy local food, hands-on learning, and school and community connectedness. So we empower students and school communities to make informed food choices while contributing to vibrant, sustainable regional food systems that support the health of people, community, and the environment. Next slide. So I'll just start with a bit of background about the program for folks who aren't familiar. We've been active for about 16 years and supported 300 plus programs across British Columbia. And then we directly support 22 school districts. Next slide. Just gloss over this. We are a program of the Public Health Association of BC and supported by the province. And then we operate on a different model where we have regional hubs. So as Vicki mentioned, I work within the Vancouver area. And then we have 7 other regional hubs. And the reason we do that is we try and leverage the support of these communities. So working really collaboratively with school districts, community partners, farmers, teachers, parents, a whole range of folks, and then working on this kind of regional model to be able to adapt and respond. Next slide. So this is some examples of Farm to School BC programs. You'll hear from, I think, Brent and TJ later about Lunch Lab, which is definitely an example of those 3 principles in action, but we take a really flexible approach and want to meet school communities where they're at. So, some schools like Fresh Roots, the schools that Fresh Roots works with, they have school farms and that's amazing, but we know that not every school has that capacity or interest or, variety of reasons. So we really try and have a lot of different options available to schools like microgreens and tower gardens and beekeeping and indoor grow stations, like really anything that has those 3 principles. And this is really like an evidence-based approach around having those hands-on opportunities improves the willingness to try new fruits and vegetables and building that positive relationship to food through the hands-on experiences, and then also getting to taste and try out different foods. And then also providing that different learning environment. So we find like a lot of students who, don't thrive in a traditional learning environment, having these opportunities is so important. And then there's also so many different curricular links, which I won't go into since a parent audience and more of a teacher audience would be appropriate, but there's just so many different tie-ins with the curriculum around science and math and ASTT and ADST and all those different things. So yeah, next slide. And then a bit about the Vancouver Area Regional Hub. So it includes SD 38, 39, 44, 45, and 48, and all the independent French First Nations schools in the region. And we've been supporting VSB directly since 2014. And so I mentioned a bit about the different programs that we support, and we do that in a few different ways through offering grants on a yearly basis, programs like learning circles and other opportunities for networking and knowledge exchange. A lot of times focused on teachers, but also trying to bring in parents and community partners and all those who are supporting programs, because we know it takes that large community support. And then events like spring celebrations, where we get to celebrate all the amazing work that communities are doing. And then other collaborations such as Indigenous Foodscapes projects and other multi-stakeholder collaborations. So we supported over 20 schools directly in Vancouver. And those are a variety of different programs, including gardens, connecting with local farms, growing foods for meal programs, and more. And as I mentioned, working with a lot of different folks to make sure these programs run and to share, learn, and grow the farm to school movement. Next slide. This is just a photo from the Spring Celebration 2017. I think this was at the Britannia Carving Pavilion, just kind of showing all the range of folks who come together to make these programs happen. Next slide. Cool. So now I'll transition a bit and talk a little bit about farm to school fundraisers. So we've already kind of touched on this through different presentations, but just knowing that, you know, a lot of these garden programs and other school food programs do require additional fundraising. And also we want to ensure that they're sustainable over time. So a lot of schools will receive a farm to school grant and maybe a PAC member or a teacher will apply for it. But then what does that look like when that grant funding runs out, and how do you support that? And then also, how do you support local food systems within school fundraisers? And I'm just offering some suggestions. You obviously know your local context a lot better than I do, but just showing what we've seen that has worked in different schools and different ideas. Next slide. So there's a lot of different fundraisers connected to school gardens, and these often would require collaboration with the PAC and teachers and different community partners, depending on how your garden program is managed. But things like seed saving and selling seed packets, hosting a pop-up farmers market at your school in the spring or fall, or over the summer if you have some parent volunteers who are able to support that. Tabling at the Vancouver farmers market. Reach out to me if you want to know more details about that. Garlic fundraisers, those kinds of things that you can integrate with an existing program that also you're able to fundraise and keep that program sustaining. These slides have a lot of information, but I also have a handout that has some links and resources if you're curious about ways to do this in your own school. Next slide, please. And some ideas for community events and different fundraisers. There's some schools that have done harvest boxes where they will partner with a local farm and then bring it in and do like an order form, and then the parents can order ahead of time, and then they work with different teachers to bring classes in and like count all the different vegetables and separate it all out and those kinds of things. Some other ideas around harvest celebration events and tying in, like, I think somebody in the chat was mentioning raffles and that kind of thing. So, you know, having those events that celebrate either the harvest in your garden or just the harvest season, and then bringing in those fundraising components. Movie nights featuring local food. Got some resources around different movies that you could feature, and the Fresh to You fundraiser, which is a program through the Agriculture in the Classroom program. Next slide. There's just some photos from Animal Seymour, which I think there's probably a parent in the chat who's from that school, and just, I don't know if they had a fundraising aspect, but it's kind of events like that that bring the community together that you can incorporate, while also I think it's some squash soup and that kind of thing. So just finding ways to have those experiences, and then also thinking about what are ways that can help sustain the program. Next slide. And then some other business supporting fundraising opportunities that are already integrated. So if you're already trying to buy West Coast seeds, they also have some fundraising programs. And I won't go through this because this is in the resource package, but just some other ideas that I'm sure many of you are already using, but ways to think about how it's contributing to the local food system as well. And then I just wanted to put a plug in for the Farm to School conference that's happening at UBC Vancouver, May 17th to 19th. We're super excited about it. I'll put the link in the chat. But there'll be some hands-on field trips the day of, and then the conference for the next 2 days. So definitely open to parents and teachers and any folks supporting these programs. And then we're also we just closed our call for proposals, but always looking for partners and supporters for the conference. So yeah, that'll be a great time just to connect with folks from across the province. Next slide. Cool. And then if you're curious about learning more about Farm to School, this was kind of just a taste of what Farm to School programs can look like and how they can support your schools. Feel free to reach out to me or check out our website, or join the listserv, which is where a lot of events and resources and grant opportunities are shared out as well. Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Maren. Yeah, it's amazing to see how much work Farm to School BC does to support like food literacy, and can really help make that connection between what the kids are eating and, you know, kind of what's growing around them, especially because we're so blessed here in the Lower Mainland to have such amazing fertile soil. Okay, now we'll move on to lunch lab presentations. So we have two presenters who will co-present this presentation. So the first one is Brent Mansfield. Brent is an elementary school teacher at Lord Roberts. He's been teaching edible education as a prep teacher, and he'll tell you more about that. And together with Chef TJ and in partnership with Growing Chefs and Fresh Roots, helped to create Lunch Lab. And Chef TJ, I know a little bit about. I have not met him yet, but I know that he did train at the under French chefs at the Pacific Institute of Culinary Arts and worked in several hotels and has worked all the way to produce like big galas for important consulates. And he now owns Ono Vancouver, which is a kitchen consulting company and helps small to medium scale business food programs. And he's also been instrumental in the success of Lunch Lab. So with that, I will turn it over to Brent and TJ.
Thanks so much, Vicki, and to all of you for being here and caring about these issues. It is a pleasure to share with parents on some of the work that we're doing. It's also great to follow some great context. The table has been set for us, and so many things that the previous speakers have said, we'll kind of assume that you now believe and kind of build off of. And we want to tell you a little bit of our story of what's happened at Lunch Lab. Specifically at Lord Roberts, there's also in partnership with Growing Chefs and Fresh Roots, there's also a similar kind of pilot version at an alternative high school called Total Education. We're going to focus on Lord Roberts because that's where TJ and I are. And you can go to the next slide there, Vicki. So quickly, the next one, there was a quote. For me, as a teacher, lunch is a massive opportunity for learning. Not only is it about making sure students can sit down, enjoy a delicious meal at the center of every day and, gather themselves, connect with their friends, do all the things that we all love to do around lunch. But the goal with Lunch Lab is really how do we make that a central piece of the day? And rather than seeing food as a distraction or something we need to quickly get through so we can get back to learning, we can make it all about learning. Next slide, please, Vicki. So a little bit of background just about edible education, because it's a fairly unique context, and then how Lunch Lab has connected and kind of grown out of that. So I am a certified elementary school teacher, had actually left teaching for 7 years and was doing work related all around food and food systems change at a variety of levels, and thankfully went back to school because school is where I love to be. And food is a central part of my passion, and was lucky enough in a unique situation with a really supportive school and an innovative principal and some transition in staff to be able to teach edible education. So gardening, cooking, healthy eating, you name it, as a prep teacher. So I teach every single student at Lord Roberts, over 650 of them, once a week. It's a little bit of a whirlwind, but it's a lot of fun. We have 28 garden beds, so quite a large gardening program. I teach out of the school's multi-purpose room, which is the lunch room. So we do have some kitchen infrastructure, and Lunch Lab has had to get creative to make that happen. And then we also then have that lunchroom, right? So I'm not going to tell you the whole background story, but fortunate enough, a big piece of this was good old Chef TJ being a parent of students at my school and reaching out to me through the principal. And we sat down, and I can remember the first meeting we had where it's like, okay, TJ, how in can I get you into this? Because we have some big dreams, and had some funding from Farm to Cafeteria Canada, and started having conversations with Growing Chefs and Fresh Roots around, we wanted to do a salad bar, maybe a farm to school salad bar, but then started to dream a little bit bigger of what that could look like, and are now at a place where my grade 6 and 7 students, as an extension of edible education, once every second week when it is their turn, they come and they, from the beginning of recess to the end of lunch and even a little bit beyond, get the privilege of working with Chef TJ and a number of other sous chefs and residents to meaningfully be involved in all aspects of food preparation, serving, the beginnings of cleanup. And we're now at a place where we have 200 students, up to 200 students from grade 4 to 7, regularly eating at Lunch Lab every Tuesday and Thursday. And, because I'm going to show you pictures of beautiful food on blue trays because it really makes them pop. And this means many of these, I try as much as possible. If you look at our Instagram, it's all my lunch because I just snap it quickly and post it for parents. These are student plates, and this is kind of the choices that students have to make. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that as well. Next slide. Just about, so this is a huge opportunity, right? This is Chef TJ. He's going to come on and speak with you shortly. Key piece, the food is delicious. We have the opportunity for students not only to learn from chefs, but access the delicious food that is kind of designed and prepared by chefs. Next slide. And a big part of that is meaningful involvement. So the one student face you can see is Chef TJ's son, Nate. We're grateful for him, and he's having a whole lot of fun cleaning the dishes. I had grade 6 students last year advocate to me that they needed to be involved. They weren't yet allowed to be on chef team, so they created the clean team, which has now become a major part of our kind of mentorship program. And currently we're transitioning from the grade 6s becoming the chefs and the grade 5s taking on clean team. And we now have a problem after, 4 years stop and start with COVID, where we actually have too many students who want to be involved in cleaning dishes, right? I know that might be a shock to some of you parents, but it's a really fun atmosphere. They're able to eat first, they're able to give back, and it's a really beautiful thing to get them involved. And then as they go to grade 7 or grade 6 in the second part of the year, they're actually are involved in prepping the veggies for the salad bar. There's some that are in the kitchen that are working on the entree. They serve all the food to their peers. They do the final wipe down of the tables. And we actually today literally just saw the last day with our first cohort, which was a little bit emotional because it was awesome to see how far these students have come and still excited to give back right till the last day, which is fantastic, and just all that they get out of it. Next slide, please. So hopefully this goes without saying, the food skills that they develop and confidence in a kitchen is a massive part of it. We also know grow it, cook it, eat it. Students that are involved in all stages of it, and eat it, they do, right? So, and then with the skill of Chef TJ and the team, looking at developing those food skills. So how do they safely use a knife? How do they communicate in a kitchen? How do they, operate around hot stoves and things like that? And how do they kind of learn these different recipes? And then life skills. This is perhaps one of the biggest surprises to me as a teacher, and where I'm the most proud is the level of responsibility and leadership these students show. And we hold them to a high account. I only know of one other school in North America where grade 6s and 7s are meaningfully involved in food preparation. And I maybe know why, but I also believe that we can do it. And my students and the work that we've done show that if you trust and hold grade 6 and 7 students to that level of responsibility, they show up. And I also work in a restaurant one night a week because I love food. I actually think my students are more responsible than many of my serving colleagues, but that is another story. They're just phenomenal. They really own it. And they're never late for shifts. They're always there. We give them a schedule and they say, we say you need to be there. And this is when you need to be there and what you need to be wearing. And without fail, they consistently do. And we've probably had, I think it's now over 150 chef team students come through. They apply to do it because we really want them to mean it. And they've shown up and consistently go over and above what we ask them to. Next slide, please. Also a big part of it, right? So once their peers are cooking it and serving it, they've been through edible education programs. I also think Laura Roberts is an amazing, diverse food culture that we have. Students are willing to try new foods, and we actually do not tell them before they come into the lunchroom what is for lunch. And part of that is because we want them just to be open. We want them to trust. We want them to be willing to try new food. We always make sure there's enough that they're not going to leave the room hungry, but we're going to push them to try new things. And I say to my students from the minute they're in kindergarten until they're done, if you try it and you don't like it, we're proud you tried it, keep trying it, because we often need to try these things many times. So pizza can have vegetables on it, right? There's blue corn tacos. And even as one of my students said today, don't judge a book by its cover. Even when something doesn't look right, this palak paneer, for too many students who have never seen it, they were unsure and then they devoured it, right? So it's, and obviously it's not every kid, but this is what we served. That was lunch for the day and no one left hungry. Next slide, please. A big part, Helen spoke to this. I'm a big believer in food exploration-based nutrition education. The students need to know the basics, but it's actually about exposure to these foods and just being around them. This is the second part of the Canada Food Guide that people don't think of. They think of the plate. The second part here really gets at many things that we try and get at in Lunch Lab, and that's around cooking more often, right? Yes, we're talking about parents, and families, but this is also these students. How are we enjoying our food? How can we teach students to really recognize and value delicious and healthy food? How can we share meals together? So one of my favorite parts is they get to share the lunchroom. They choose where they sit. I have less behavior issues when I have 200 students eating in the lunchroom, which is my classroom, than I might on an average Tuesday with 20. They really kind of buy into it. And that's been an awesome part of just seeing how they respond to the culture that we've all worked to create, of just kind of enjoying good, delicious food together. Next slide, please. Right, and a big part of that, and in terms of raising mindful eaters that actually know when they're hungry and when they're full, that honors the choice that they're able to make, and trusts them to be responsible, challenges them, but also edits the options they have available. And these are the plates that they serve themselves, right? So these are not my plates. We've created a bit of a cult culture around kale, believe it or not, and put hollyhock dressing on it. And I think the kale in the garden and the kale chips we've made over the years might have helped this, but we go through kale every week, and if it's not kale, they complain. You know, we might mix a couple things in. So awesome plates that they just work on and develop themselves, teaching them if they're hungry, go get more. If they're done, stop. Right. These are just really essential things that we want to not just tell them, but model in the program. And a lot of the things that we do are about kind of allowing that to be possible, and just that culture of trying new food, the culture of, you know, convivial conversation, the culture of just enjoyment that we find to be so important. And they really embrace in ways that I kind of wish there could be you know, you could follow your own student on camera and to see how they act, because I'm sure they're not doing quite what they are for us that they are for you, but we're working together to do the same thing. Next slide, please, Vicky. I said this, but again, I love showing these pictures. It's about sharing food together at its essence. This is, to me, what it means to be human, right? How do we share delicious food? How do we make that the norm at schools? And some of the best advocacy conversations I've ever had with provincial ministers were in the middle of that lunchroom, because you can't say the kids won't eat it when the kids are eating it and asking for more and preparing the food and helping clean up, right? It all happens. So this is a big part of it for us. Next one. TJ, this is you.
Yeah, so hi everybody. I just wanted to piggyback off the last slide, talking about the kids being able to access food all together. I was in a meeting this morning talking to a bunch of different food advocates in downtown Eastside, and one of them was Leona Brown, Ian Marcus, who's actually in this call, and as well as people from Kalaalleq. And we talked a little bit about having food as a right. So food is a right. So that includes our student, and that includes for Indigenous people and visible minorities like myself and people that I know, to be able to access the same food on the table as everybody else. So like having that as a basis, and this is kind of why I got into Lunch Lab, is because I have 2 children that are in the Vancouver School Board, and I want people like them that look like them to be able to access the same food, same healthy, nutritious food as everybody else that are around Vancouver, and specifically in the elementary school that they're in. And just to elaborate a little bit more, with this program, being able to have chefs on the table, so to speak, being able to affect the things that they can affect, how delicious the food is, no matter how we tell the kids to eat their kale, no matter how we tell the kids to eat their vegetable. If we don't make it delicious, they're not going to eat it. So what we do, what growing chefs and fresh fruits have been able to really do is bring people like myself and my team and other chefs that are around to be at that table and have the same conversation about how we get kids to eat healthy. And even during the time that we were cooking for chefs for families, when we were distributing food during COVID to the kids that couldn't access their school meal program, we had chefs prepare those meals. So yeah, sorry. So for this next slide, on my other advocacy that I do, as I mentioned, is addressing the food waste and food recovery. And we incorporate that in our teaching in classes, so that at very early age, they notice how much food waste is around, how many of their peers may or may not know where their food is coming from. Learning about all the food system in general, knowing that the kale that they're eating today may be from a place that through Vancouver Food Runners and other food partners that we have been donated to us, and there's nothing wrong with when they're preparing it themselves. They're all talking about, hey, how come this would have been thrown out into the garbage, but they're beautiful produce and there's no blemish at all, and them connecting that to, and then there's people that are not, that are food insecure. So that's also part of our curriculum, or so to speak, or our teaching moments, and they get to see it in front of them. They get to eat it as well and notice that there is an issue there. Next slide, please.
I think that one was me quickly there, TJ, just saying, I mean, a big part of that is parents, right? Parents have really bought in and signed up their kids with their kids' interest. Parents have, we asked parents if they can spend more than the $5 and they want to contribute to support another student who maybe is able to pay less. Our community has stepped up and done that. This on the left is actually a snap of our Instagram. So I actually, because we don't tell people ahead of time what the food is, I do my best to put it on Instagram that afternoon so parents can see what their students are eating and have conversations around it. We also, I can say, you know, Fresh Roots and Growing Chefs, we would not have been able to do this without. This has been really a partnership and the ability to have TJ there, but also the parents. TJ is a parent. This is Chef Dana in the back there with the mask. She is also a parent who is now one of the sous chefs, really invested, really great at getting other parent volunteers. And it's become its own little community of people that are able to, and not everyone is, but able to kind of sneak off and help out for a little bit, whether that's working with a group of students as they're, you know, capably chopping something up, or whether that's, you know, helping kind of wash the last couple of dishes as we get students involved as much as we can, but it can't go right to the end just in terms of timing and other curricular stuff they need to get to. So parents have been hugely supportive. Ian Rowe, who is on this call, is a parent from our school and has been fantastic. Ian Abbott jumped in on Clean Team one more time for us today because we needed him, and the kids just really step up. Next one is over to TJ.
Yeah, and so just to add to that a little bit with the connecting with your parents that are in the schools already. So not only that we have people in our in our chef team that are two of our chef team actually are both food professionals, but also we have people that are in the food equipment business that are also donating to us regularly. Hey, do you need some plates? So like leveraging that, and as well as leveraging your community partners. As I mentioned, I work with Vancouver food runners, getting different food that are that would be bound for the garbage, but are perfectly good food that we are now able to use in Lunch Lab, and also is helping us with our food costs. And that's a big plus that we've been able to add this year. And just, yeah, using your assets, infrastructure, and connection. I work at a commissary kitchen. Coal Commissary has been gracious enough to let us use their kitchen. Now, what we've learned this year is for us to be able to grow, for us to be able to have more teaching moment, for us to be able to have more exponential growth in later on. We're going to need to have the proper infrastructure, because we know that schools now do not have the infrastructure that we have. For example, here at my daughter's high school, King George, their kitchen, you cannot even go inside the kitchen because their infrastructure is just non-existent. So having a place where you can actually help, and we make sauces, we make different things that could help us in Lunch Lab or Lord Roberts, and all we have to do is teach the kids how to make a small amount of it, or roast vegetables, or finish the sauces. That's really has helped us out a lot. And yeah, just using your connections. We have even down to our local food providers, Yen Brothers Food. They know what we do. They understand what kids could eat. So once in a while, they'll give us some yogurt that they couldn't sell, and that we could give to our students. And just once in a while, we'll get a bunch of different apples and different fruits, watermelons, things like that. And those days are as big special treats for our kids, and we're saving costs as well.
Yeah, and we won't be able to go into this today, but just we've gotten pretty creative with the space that we have. Don't imagine that Lord Roberts is a dream kitchen that we work out of. We put up an artificial wall in the multipurpose room. I am teaching a class, but technically overseeing all students, and we make it work. And we've, in partnership with Fresh Roots and Growing Chefs, been able to secure funding from all sorts of different places that allowed us to develop some of the infrastructure to be able to have an extra cooler and a freezer. And TJ is a wizard. You know, he mentioned his consulting company, Ono Vancouver. He does this for restaurants. Lunch Lab is a restaurant. It just happens to have young chefs, and we are fully licensed like a restaurant. We have gone through that whole process just to be able to do this in an elementary school, which is a little bit unique. And the school board is supportive, but also doesn't quite know what to do with us, but can see that it's a phenomenal program and is really just supporting and engaging students. So what's not to like about that? Last slide there, Vicky. I know we're heading off for some discussion. So just wanted to say thanks for listening. We'll stick around as long as I can in terms of some of the conversations. Excited that parents are invested in this, and thank you, Vicky, for your tireless work on these issues over many years, but especially tonight for helping to pull this together.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh my goodness, thank you guys so much. First, please join me in giving a round of applause to all of our speakers tonight, because it's such a wide range of information and really touches on so many different points of the food system. And yeah, especially Lunch Lab, like just for, raising the, showing kids and raising the value and opening the discussion about what good food is, right? And valuing good food and paying attention to that whole environment, right? Lunch is at school. School is a learning environment. So it really is an opportunity that I think a lot of, most schools right now just don't have the ability or capacity to do it. So.
And this is where I'm going to jump back in if I can, Vicky, right? The opportunity to dream big together. No one can do this alone. I'm a teacher. I couldn't do this without a chef. The chef, we couldn't have figured this out without Fresh Fruits and Growing Chefs. It's just not possible without the parents to be bought in, right? And it's for Canada to move forward and BC and Vancouver to move forward. It's how do we leverage all of our assets? How do we dream big for the future health and well-being and life skills of our students? And what opportunities are there over the next couple of years to really see learning and access to delicious and healthy food really grow across Vancouver. So excited to be part of this conversation. Excited for, I can say I've been involved in the Coalition for Healthy School Food since the beginning, same with Farm to School BC and Vancouver. And I feel like we're in a critical moment in Vancouver and in BC. And I'm excited for this budget announcement and what that might begin to crack open. And it's going to be a slow trickle probably in terms of what schools can take on. But if each of us kind of do work in our own space and all the big players step up to the plate, I think there's a huge potential for this work to really grow.
Okay. Maybe we can just open it up for a few minutes for general questions. I know we do want to go into breakout rooms with so many people here. I think it is probably easier just if we break into breakout rooms if we're able to. Kayenta, is that possible? I don't have the control to do that, so I can't do it right now, but.
It is absolutely possible. I would need to figure out how to do that. But I have full confidence that within a few minutes that I can probably do that.
Okay, if anybody does need to jump off the meeting, we are interested in knowing just kind of what your main takeaways from this discussion are and kind of just what your thinking are. So whether you have to jump off now or a bit later in the meeting, just leave us with that, and then we'll have we'll be able to kind of work on that. Wilma, did you have a question?
Yeah, if people could put their questions if they have to leave in the chat, that would be
that
great.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just would like to say congratulations. That is really amazing what you guys are doing. I miss being the lunch lady. I used to be one at David Lloyd George when my daughter is in elementary school, because they are only one of the few schools that have the industrial kitchen. So we definitely make like lasagna, spaghetti from scratch, and every day I make them soup. Usually make 120 to 150 kids and other staff, but it's being run by the daycare during that time. And unfortunately, due to seismic upgrade, so they removed that. That's what I heard. They don't have any more industrial kitchen in the new building. Now, I'm just curious to know, because in the school that I'm working with right now, we have some free lunches for some kids, but I think the government had changed that and removed some of those free hot lunches in the other locations, which is kind of unfair, right? And but I've seen the improvement as well from the hot lunch, the free lunches that the school are providing before, and what's now, because now they're very specific as well, that it has to be with people that have allergies, and it is well presented. It's not like before wherein they come in those paper bags and some kids are really embarrassed of taking them and carrying them because they get some negative feedbacks from the others. Right now, in some communities, it is a norm, but it is such a big concern because I wish that it is accessible for everybody. I mean, during that time, the lunch budget, I believe it can go down up to like maybe $3, and we serve milk, fruit, hot soup, and also the main meal. And if some kids are too picky, they don't want the main meal, they can have a toast or like a piece of sandwich with a jam or cheese, and then we keep encouraging them and ask them, try this and try that, right? Because a lot of the kids, because of different backgrounds, doesn't even know what a shepherd's pie is. So we have to make a tricky name so that they will be encouraged to try it. But the kids love tater tots for some reason, and fish and chips day.
Did you know that we had? Did you know that we had shepherd's pie at Lunch Lab today? Did you? How did you know that?
No, I didn't know. That was me when I was a lunch lady. That's what we cook. That's what I cook in the program. So we design it every month. So I really like your idea that the kids come in and they don't know what type of food they will be getting, so that they can increase being open-minded and acceptance, right? Because that's the really, really first step. And not all of this food is something that they can access at home, unfortunately. And then now the inflation. So I wonder, where did Lord Roberts get the budget to keep you guys? Because the other schools don't have you. So
I am a teacher, right? So here's the difference. I teach prep, like at many schools. There's a gym teacher or a PE teacher or a music teacher or a librarian. Those also exist at Lord Roberts, but we're a big enough school. And I had the background that I'm a prep teacher. So I'm able to anchor it as a practicing teacher. So my staff time is covered, and I put a lot of time into it, and I see it like my version of coaching. The rest of it has been a kind of an innovative pilot with Growing Chefs and Fresh Fruit. So partnering with two charities that have been doing a ton of work on this. Alexa is a major player in this as well. Has made this possible. We really hope that by demonstrating what is possible and what the level of infrastructure and investment is, right? Because it's very real. There's been a decent chunk of money invested in making this possible. What could that look like if, everyone steps up to the plate? And by that, I mean the federal government, the provincial government, community-based charities are also involved, but this is also publicly funded, and this becomes possible. And we get creative with amazing chefs like TJ. What could be possible in terms of what infrastructure that we can use, and how can we get creative? And obviously we need to be food safe. We need to make sure that we have those, but what needs to happen to retrofit schools and make this possible as we see a movement towards kind of a comprehensive and universal lunch across Canada.
And as for me, I am so we mentioned earlier how you have to kind of tap into your community of parents that you're already in the school system. I am being paid by the Lunch Lab program, but in the caliber of the chef that you need to be able to run this program, it is not quite enough. But what is enough is the passion and to change the school food system, and being recognized as somebody that is needed to be able to run this program, and having somebody that like me that wants to try and change the system. It's a little bit tough at the moment, but obviously once we're able to get more funding, we probably will be able to afford high level chefs that are going to keep contributing to our program.
Yeah, that's great, because what am I going to say? Yeah, like in comparison, this free lunches that you guys are doing, in comparison, when you see the hot lunches, they're mostly made of pizza and Subway, which is kind of like,
if you build it, they will come. It's we've worked with these kids for 5 years, right? This kind of acceptance and culture doesn't happen overnight. I always tell people that, right? But it can happen. right?
Yes.
And we can work towards this, right? Also to say, and Alexa put this in the chat as well, we do ask parents who can make the contribution to pay $5. The meal does cost more than that, but that's what, so we're trying to figure out a model where parents contribute when they can. There is actually, one of the major funders has actually been the city of Vancouver through the same funding that has funded the Vancouver School Board to do that other lunch program. We're trying to see, is there another model that is also educational, that is also viable? And then like Alexa said so well, when we talk about social return on investment and all the benefits, really all levels of government should be chomping at the bit to fund programs like this, right? And yes, I am a teacher champion. We can make others. Like this is something that can build if we have the imagination and belief, and we have levels of support from parents that buy in and actually say that lunch is about learning and is about giving students these opportunities to eat and try and cook delicious food, right? So and I hope a lot of schools that have some of the infrastructure. Lord Roberts was one of the VSP programs and used to have, as we say, a lunch lady. Let's keep that going, right? These communities of care that come alongside students. The food staff in Vancouver that are or have always been such an important part of the culture at any school, and are just really connected. And I know as a teacher being involved in feeding kids, though it's really TJ and the kids that feed me, if we're honest, has really changed my relationships with all of them, because they just see that care and that respect they give back is really beautiful.
And having this and having this food provided to them, it is amazing. I just realized, I remember something that when I was serving the kids, and one of the kids came to us, asked us to open a canned sausage. Those little canned sausage that you buy in the dollar store, because her parent, maybe they don't have time or they just don't have budget. Who knows? That's what she packed for her. And she's asking us to open it. And we are definitely, like, we feel so bad. We can't believe it that it has come to this, like kindergarten packing a canned food, and some of them are not eating, and mom is letting them to eat cereal at lunch.
Yes, and again, to kind of piggyback on what Alexa put on the chat there, we are working on making this as a pilot, as a program where everybody can copy, or as a program where everybody can learn from, with the systems that we've been able to build from like the teaching piece to the garden in the school, to having the support of chefs in the commissary kitchen, and farms like Fresh Fruits and other farms to support us, as well as all the other community partners. Really is going to have to be a system that is built around all of the community and the community partners that we have. We even have Gordon Neighborhood House coming down. So like, it really has to be a community effort and a collective effort for sure.
It takes a village to feed a child well.
What plans are there underway to replicate this, and how easy would this be to duplicate across schools in Vancouver?
This is the question we are asking, and I'll say we as in, TJ and I and Alexa and Fresh Fruits and Growing Chefs as well. We're trying to figure out what that would look like. I can say those conversations have been happening for years actually with the school board, what that would look like. It's also a matter of funding and infrastructure, and I can't tell you anything, any promises or specifics. I'll let Alexa jump in there a little bit, but it is something the goal in creating this was, I'll say first for me, for my students at Roberts, I would do this just for them. At the end of the day though, for me, it is about creating a model that other people can, we're not franchising this. This is not about, making it about, us. This is about these good ideas being spread, and whatever we can do to help support that. I know I am keen as a teacher to support other teachers and other school communities in the time that we have to be able to make that happen. Alexa, I know you got your hand. You can speak to that more officially than I can.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I think that, I think just like putting the reality lens on it, like when we talk about universal, access, like at Lord Roberts, there's 600 plus students, and we're feeding, 185-ish twice a week. So it's a fantastic program. I'm not taking any of that away, but it is not necessarily like a universal access program in its current form. And so when I say that, it's like, I think I totally agree with Brent. It's like, this is Lunch Lab is what is exciting is, like, I think I sensed some of it from you all. It's demonstrating a totally different way at coming at school food. And so we're not, you know, obviously it's like, this is not maybe the exact program that fits in every school. The program looks very different at Total Education alternative high school program. And, you know, it's based on the same principles, but looks and feels quite different. So I think that, you know, we're in discussions with the school board and with the city, and we want to, you know, we would like to add other schools to the Lunch Lab roster, but at the same time, we haven't figured out all the details, and every school situation is so unique. So I think that's where we come back to the, you know, principles of the coalition, is that there needs to be that local feel and local control over these programs, because one size does not fit all, and the resources look and feel different everywhere. So yeah, we're on track to, you know, keep figuring this model out, but at the same time, it's really about inspiring, just to like, let's come at this from a different perspective, and let's say, like, how can we make lunch, you know, that lunch hour the most educational, the most fun, the most, you know, how, like, about celebration and everything. So yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, this model does, by its very nature, require a good amount of teacher and staff involvement. It is from that end, right? And it's a lot of love, but it is a lot of extra time. So we're hoping that by telling our story and by getting the word out and more and more people finding out about this, I can imagine how other teachers could take it on. We need to figure that out, and that's something we're excited to explore in the coming years.
I would just say that this is so exciting what you guys are doing. And just to sort of echo what Alexa mentioned and you've mentioned, you're feeding a couple of hundred students a day. And what Shahzad identified was there are programs that feed maybe up to 2,000 kids across Vancouver. But what we learned in the Food Framework Committee is that 1 in 4 or 5 kids are coming to school hungry every day. So you've got in the order of magnitude of 10 to 12,000 kids coming to school every day without being fed. And that's the urgent need, an important need that we need to figure out, how do we roll out a program like this across 10 to 12,000 kids? Yeah, and I hope it doesn't take 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that will happen with the Universal School Food Program, and that it won't take 10 years to roll that out. In the meantime, we're trying at our school to explore, not to the extent that Lunch Lab is, but what would it look like to have a parent-run farm to school program where the parents are in the school cooking in the mornings, and then serving just to like maybe 1 or 2 classes at a time during the day. So it's been a very long, slow process. There's a lot of caution, you know, from the school. Of course, there's a need to do a lot of work, and like TJ says, to find those resources right within our own school. But it's worth, you know, working towards, even just to see if a model like that, you know, would work, you know, where the supports are. Yeah. Selena, did you want to say something else? I see your hand is still up.
Oh, sorry. No, I just
It's
forgot
okay.
to take it down. But I will say, since you're asking, that we're at 9:23. I believe we go till 9:30 tonight. So we have 7 minutes left. And I would guess that if we're not going to be breaking into breakout rooms. So if anyone has questions or comments they want to make, and things that they'd like to see for next steps for us to follow up on, so that we keep the momentum going on this, that would be great. I'll mention that for the DPAC, I'm the food rep, and we would love to have a food committee. And well, we have the beginning of a food committee with Vicky and Helen and Joyce, but we would love to have more people involved and keep this growing. So please contact me, and my contact info is available through the DPAC. They always put it in the newsletter. So yeah, we'd love to get more momentum behind this.
I just want to see a couple of things in the chat. Yes, the food framework. Yeah, everybody definitely should read that. It's really aspirational, and it really sets out, I think, a good vision for where we want to go. Of course, we all know that the key is the implementation and how that's going to be rolled out into the schools. How best to advocate at the district level for the school food framework. I know that like the DPAC or the parents through the DPAC are advocating for continued action. I don't know, community partners, I guess through there's a Vancouver School Food Network, or does anyone have any ideas for how the best way to advocate for, achieving the vision that's in the framework would be?
I love that you're continue to ask senior management those questions. You are at stakeholder meetings that many of us cannot be at.
Yeah.
I'm not invited to those tables, so they're my employer. Keep asking them. You know, it was a community vision, one that not all the school board buys into completely. So keep asking and show that we care, right? As parents, I think you have a massive voice. And I personally would love that voice added here in Vancouver and provincially, being involved, in different ways in the advocacy. Loving to see more parents stepping up and making this part of your message around how school, the dream, right? Ian said, imagine a school where the school board where this became a normal thing, right? Let's keep the feet to the fire and just keep holding that as a vision.
And if I can just add as well, advocating, writing directly to VSB is amazing. CC DPAC on that, because if we know that parents are writing to VSB, we can amplify those voices. When we get parents asking us or approaching us, asking for us to take action on their behalf, and then we go talk to VSB, we regularly get asked, how many parents want this? So if we have a really clear picture that, a lot of parents want this change, that really empowers us and enables change within VSB. So always CC DPAC.
And I think that you can also go to VSB meetings where, food is discussed. I think there's a couple meetings coming up, and hopefully there will be even more as this food framework gets, as the trustees are now more settled into their roles and start to get their teeth into it a bit. So I know that we have, I've promised to send out a few resources and handouts related to the meeting. So we'll just work with the DPAC to make sure that we can get those out. Sandra, did you want to ask a question? No.
Yeah, not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation today. And I just wanted to add my opinion or feedback or whatever. I don't know, just a comment that I would love to see a universal school lunch program that involves all the students, not just like feeding the student who need it, which is basically what they have right now. Because my kids, I'm a single parent of 3 and on income assistance. And my daughter's already graduated in 2020, but it took her about, well, when my kids were in elementary school, they had a hot lunch program in their school, and everyone got hot lunch because they were inner city school or tier school. But so there was no stigma attached to it. Everyone was, eating the same lunch. But then when she went to high school, there was she could get a lunch card and get free lunch, or like pay what you can kind of thing. But I think it wasn't until grade 10 or 11 that she finally got it, because I actually asked about it and I was told that she needs to talk to the vice principal. She also has anxiety, so that could be some of it, but she was also embarrassed to ask for it. So I was packing her lunches, and that's quite a cost when you're low income. I was packing her lunches every day until maybe 3 years later, finally, she with her counselor's help, got the lunch program. And then my son now, my youngest, is in grade 9 at Templeton, and he has the lunch program. But honestly, he has autism, so there's no stigma for him. Like, he has no concept of like the social, things. But I'd like to see it destigmatized and make it universal for all students to be involved, so that there's no like, oh, this kid having free lunch kind of thing. And that's my takeaway from today. Thanks.
Thank you so much for pointing that out, and I fully agree. And I mean, even kids who aren't low income don't always eat the best lunch or healthiest lunch, so I think it can benefit everybody. Anyway, Sky, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking there was a really good program out at Crawford Bay. There was a school out there, and they had hot lunches every single day. That was like, I think it was 5. I mean, people had to pay money, and I think there was some sort of subsidies, but it's a small community, so it worked so well, and it's just so nice to see that there's a school here, and I really hope we can get that happening. It would be lovely.
Well, everyone, it's 9:31. So Kayenta, are you going to be shutting
I
us
was going to
down?
say exactly that. I want to
Thank
take a
you
moment
so
and
much for everybody this evening participating in this. And we've been working on this for many months, getting this to happen. And I'm so grateful for all the support and excitement behind it tonight. And yes, I saw some comments about advocating to get the food framework to have a universal lunch program sooner than later. Not 10 years from now. So hopefully if we all add our voices to this and all chime in, that we can hopefully light a fire under the VSB to get support for this to happen sooner. But thanks to everybody, the presenters tonight, the DPAC, and the wonderful team that put this together, Vicky, Helen, Joyce. So thanks, guys. Over to you,
and
Kayenta.
I reiterate that. Thank you so much for the information you shared tonight. It's been a fantastic presentation, and you can see by the numbers we've had tonight that it is of great interest and a really engaging conversation afterwards. So thank you very much.